Welcome to the Spend and Nick Show. This is episode 12. Nick, how you doing?
Oh, well, I've been quite busy this week. I've got a lot of jobs to be done, you know.
Whoa, let me stop you right there. You've got lots of jobs to be done, you say. That's completely wrong. You're not using the right terminology because what you're just describing is a task list, not jobs to be done. And that is that jobs to be done often gets confused as a synonym for the task lists, right? But it's not. It's a particular methodology or approach. Actually, I'd go one step higher than that. It's actually a mindset. Enables you to create products that people actually want. Okay, so that sounds like a pretty cool thing, right?
That sounds
It's
fantastic.
not just a task list. I get this so often and it really frustrates me because it's such a powerful tool and such a powerful mindset and approach to take when you're really trying to solve really great problems and make sure that your business is going to be successful. So that's it's got to be a good thing for our listeners to hear this.
And it's probably quite topical at the moment as well because it was developed by Clayton Christensen, who recently passed away.
Yeah, super sad. Clayton Christensen, famous, of course, for the Innovator's Dilemma, which is the whole disruption of innovation theory that he kind of coined and got so popular over the last, what would that be, about 20 years maybe?
Yeah, must
Something
be.
Like
yeah,
that. Incredible.
Definitely.
And then, of course, Jobs to be Done theory was something that he popularized because he had a platform that enabled him to kind of get his voice out. And really, I talk a little bit about what Jobs to be Done is so that we can avoid this confusion that we get to so often.
Mm-hmm.
It's got some strange terminology, so I'll apologise for that straight up front, but we're going to try and get deep into that terminology so we can really understand it. Anybody buys a product or a service in order to make progress against a problem that they have. They hire a product in order to do a job in their life. Okay, so strange terminology about hiring and jobs, but imagine anyone that buys anything basically does it because they have a problem and they want to progress against that problem. That's the whole concept really of Jobs to be Done. Does that make sense? Totally.
But how does that contrast with the kind of user stories or personas? Because that really, I think, will bring it to life for people.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're different approaches and different schools of thought. And what we're particularly drilling into here is the approaches that we take within teams in organizations to try to develop the right features and the right feature set for our product. For our product, exactly. So with a user story, you often focus on a persona and they take a specific form. So it could be as a, that is the persona, I need to, which is the problem or the action that you want, and then in order to is the outcome, the expected outcome that you want to achieve. So as a podcast host, I need a good mic lead that plugs easily into the mic because I'm not an engineer, but I want it to be simple and smooth. So the user story in that instance is, as a podcast host, I want to make sure I can plug in lead really easily to my mic so that I can quickly record a podcast. That kind of makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
The thing is about that there's a bunch of assumptions there that aren't really, and there's a lot of stuff that's just not needed. The fact that I'm a podcast host has no relevance in this whatsoever. Anyone that wants to plug in a microphone wants to do it easily, right? So what Jobs stories do, what Jobs enables us to do is go into the problem a little bit more and figure out what some of the motivations and some of the forces are and some of the context is that people are having these problems in. So an example here is when I'm recording a podcast, I want to get the setup as quick as possible, as smooth as possible, so that I can maximize the time talking to you rather than having too much time setting things up and things going wrong, right? So that's an important factor. We're both busy people. As you said, you've got a lot of tasks that you need doing. Therefore, we need to minimize that time. So there's a load of factors and motivations and context that come into account with that. It needs to be simple. It needs to be clean. It needs to be quick. I'm not an engineer, so I don't want to be fumbling around with the wrong cables. It needs to be really simple and obvious what I need to do. So the simplified job story in that would be when I'm trying to record a podcast, I need something really simple that works every time, never lets me down, so that I can maximize my time in the good stuff in delivering great content. Does that help make sense?
Yeah. Can you share the templates again so that we can see them one after another and can compare them in context?
Yeah. So the user story is, as a, for example, podcast host or bus driver, I want to, so that is the whole story. So as I want to, so that.
And that's very much focused on the identity of the person.
The identity of the person, yeah. Which actually, in most instances, is irrelevant, I believe. So therefore, the job story is about the context. So when so it's when and this is where the motivations and the forces come in. I want to, so that. And that so that is about the outcome, it's the pain, it's the problem that you're trying to solve.
And how is that going to help me create better products and services?
So the key with this is, I'm going to go back a step because it's, I think, a really important question is, how do we come up with what these job stories are? And they come from direct interviews with your users. Okay, so again, this idea of user stories and the comparison, the difference between them. And don't get me wrong, user stories are great. They have a really good place. Personas are great for certain things. But what job stories has as an advantage, at its extra advantage for me, is that they're based on real people that you've had interviews with directly. And so they come out of those early interviews that you have with your potential customers, with your user base. So having a conversation with someone, really you want to be trying to aim for a good half an hour, 45-minute conversation. They can be done quicker than that. You know, if you've got 15 minutes here and there, then great. But the reason you want to have that in-depth conversation is because you need to be talking about the things that led up to a certain purchase and happened after a certain purchase. So it's that whole journey up to the point and beyond of where someone makes a purchasing decision. So it's because that way you understand some of those motivations and the forces again. Are people being pulled towards a new product? Do they have a fear of the new product? Because that's an important motivation as well. Are people actually attracted to new products because they haven't found an adequate solution somewhere else because other competitors or other people that offer that service aren't doing a good enough job for it? So those are all the motivations that you need to understand in order to then make sure you're building the right features and that you're marketing it right. So once we've got that, the way that we do it at Future Builders is we start with big overarching job statements. And these can be quite long. They can be like full prose. You're really trying to almost paint this full story, this full picture of how you came to some of the important points that you're using. It's definitely a combination of a lot of people's voices. So it's not just based on one interview that you have, but you're trying to kind of compound and put together all those little nuances and important factors that you discover when you're doing these interviews. And from that, you can then focus on job stories, which are specific features that you might want to build or problems that you want to solve for a customer that you can build a feature for. So whenever I have a job story or whenever I have a feature that I want to build, it has to be baked in this idea of progress for an individual user. So I always come back to, is this going to make my user progress against that problem that they have? Is it going to make them progress against their job to be done? And if it doesn't do that, then it's no point in building the feature. So therefore, every feature that I have on my roadmap, every ticket, if you like, every action that I want a developer to build out or a designer to build out will have a job to be done story, a job story. So it really brings it back to what the important drivers are, the motivations that we're trying to achieve in order for the user to make progress again. I keep coming back to that progress because it's a critical thing. And when I first started looking at jobs to be done, I actually missed this idea of progress. I kind of just assumed that we hire something to do the whole job, but it might not be about the whole job. It's about incremental steps towards fully solving that job. I
think this relates nicely on to this idea of progress, relates nicely on to the idea of progress towards what? Or towards your gain, the outcome that people want, versus moving away from the pain.
Sure.
And this is something that I'm really interested in at the moment because I was just reading up on this recently, whereby a pain is not an opposite of a gain. That they actually can be quite different. So in the sense that if I'm going to order some coffee and I'm in a rush, if it comes in 5 minutes, that's neither a gain nor a pain. However, if I go for a coffee and I'm in a rush and it arrives in less than 2 minutes, that's a gain. That's a real outcome, that a real benefit there.
Yeah.
Whereas if it comes in 15 minutes, that's a real pain. And so you can see that by having the specificity there, it enables me to be, it enables me to understand that they're not just opposites.
Yeah.
And the other example is if you've got a credit card and you want to use your credit card and it works, that's not a gain because that's expected, that's anticipated. However, if you've got a credit card and it doesn't work because it doesn't accept the payment, that's a pain.
Yeah.
So they're not just opposites, they're actually quite distinct.
And there's probably, just with that credit card example, straight away I thought of an instance that I was in my local supermarket and my first card didn't work. And that's so embarrassing. That is painful because that can be so embarrassing. Have I not got enough money in my account? Whatever. So then I switched and I went with a Monzo. And not only did it work, but I then got the instant notification, which was an extra gain because I got this little notification straight on my app that said you've just paid for something. So that's an additional gain, which is
it reinforces the fact that it's definitely gone through, and it reassures you that it's all worked.
Yeah, so I think that's a really delightful kind of experience.
Definitely, I think Monzo is just a perfect case study for this.
Absolutely.
I think that sounds pretty good. I think we've covered quite a lot of ground there. Yeah. I think we've got a lot of jobs to be done. And maybe we should leave it.
Do you think, like, it frustrates me so much when people use it wrong. But do I need to chill out with it all?
No, it really annoys me too.
Okay,
it really frustrates me. It really frustrates me because it's a proper methodology.
Yeah.
And it's annoying when people are using it out of context that they should know what the methodology is.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I believe so strongly, and the more I use it, the more it reinforces this belief that it's probably one of the most valuable approaches, methodologies, and I think mindsets that you can adopt. I start using it now, not just in work, but for pretty much everything I do. Like, what's the pain? What's the problem we're trying to solve here? What would I hire if I could hire something now? What would it be?
And I remember studying a master's in management at university.
Yeah.
In my marketing module, what did they teach you? Personas. And personas are great, but it's like half the story and probably the more misleading, less useful part of the story.
Yep.
The more important part of the story is the context part, the jobs part.
Yep.
And that was not part of my marketing module. So if you're a marketeer, which we all are,
yep.
if we're trying to sell a product or service, which we all are
yep.
trying to do, which is our jobs actually. In some way, you could see it as a job.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think just really getting to grips with this and really understanding it is going to help us.
Yes.
So that's why I think this is a really important episode this week, and I really appreciate you going into some detail on it.
No worries. Hopefully it's helpful. I know it's a weird terminology, but if you can start to think about how you can apply this, I think the idea of having these interviews, I'm just going to recap on some of those steps, have those great interviews with people where you're trying to find, you can almost draw a timeline of when you first encountered the problem, when you first encountered some solutions, what made you look back at a website, what made you actually take that purchasing decision in the end, what then happened, what results, what gains did you get, did you feel any additional pains or any losses, did you what other competitors were you looking at, all of those things then produce this great, really rich qualitative statement of people's kind of reasons for purchasing, which you can then get down to job stories, which you can use for your development team, use for your design team to make sure everyone's really on that same page and we're all driving towards making users progress against their job. That's what it's all comes down to.
And rather than doing it like we did back in the day, which was let's make a product and then maybe like let's make a teapot and then let's see if we can find some people that want to buy it.
Yeah.
Let's actually find some people that want to buy some stuff, or let's just find some people and then build something that they really need.
Absolutely.
And that's our philosophy or our hypothesis is that it will be more successful.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's proving out to be that way with a lot of people that are using this approach. It's probably early days for us at Future Builders at the moment to see whether this approach is really working out. It seems to be the traction we're getting is definitely working out for us right now, but we've got a long way to go. So I guess we'll find out over the next few weeks and months of the podcast, because we're going to be telling everyone about how we get on.
Definitely. So let's revisit jobs to be done, because I think we've definitely not exhausted it.
Absolutely.
But should we wrap it up for today?
Let's wrap it up.
If you liked this episode, why not press the like button, or share it with a friend. Maybe smash that like button. Equally push it, press it, click it, whatever you want to do to it. that would be really good.
I've got one more thing to add. We actually got a comment on one of our YouTube videos just the other day for one of the older videos
No
a
way.
couple of weeks ago. Yeah, it was really cool. Guy called Tristan, forgotten his second name. But Tristan, thank you so much for the comment. It was a really good comment actually as well. I really liked the idea that we were talking through. I think we were talking about value proposition design or maybe business model canvas. I can't remember exactly the one that we were doing for the comment that we got. But he also talked a little bit about the idea of future builders. So some really interesting stuff is like, not sure it's got a great business model behind it, which is really making me think. It was very much focused on the B2C landscape for it. So I think when we start to talk about the B2B landscape, hopefully that might change his opinion and other people's opinion about the business viability. But also he then went on, which I thought was a really fascinating, he clearly listened to it really well. He would start to talk about the tabs, the issue of tabs, having loads of tabs stored on your iPhone. And that's a problem that he still has. So amazing comment. Thank you so much for that. Give us some more. Anybody else? Comment on what you're hearing, what you're seeing. Challenge us, because we're just two guys sitting in a room having a conversation about things that we believe. But there's a lot of people that would challenge some of these things. So feel free. We really want to be challenged and want to be have those active conversations with people. So please go ahead and do that. Right?
Definitely, absolutely. Awesome. And I'm excited to get to episode 13 now next week.
Yeah, there we go.
Until then.
Let's do the traditional.